Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Christopher, also known as Plant Queen on Instagram, and I use he, she, and they pronouns. And I have over 200 plants, or as I like to call them, green girls, in my little Brooklyn, New York apartment. Yes, you heard right. I have over 200 plants in my apartment. And so today we are going to get into all things green, all things lush, all things botanical, darling. And so just to start off with a little bit about my journey and how I got to having over 200 plants in my space. It all started really with my grandmother. She was the original green goddess in my life, and at a very early age introduced me to indoor gardening and the joys of that plants can really bring into your life, the simple joys that plants can bring into your life. And so everything that I do, everything that I do is, in honor of my grandmother. And yeah, everything I do is in honor of my grandmother. And so today we're going to get through a couple things, y'all, because I'm an educator at heart. And I just want to share a few things that, may be helpful for folks who are thinking about greening up their lives and thinking about better ways that they can care for their little indoor garden. And, we've been spending a lot of time indoors these last several months. And so folks may be looking to green up their spaces. So we are going to get into how to green up your space in a way that is joyous, that is playful, that is fun. And the first topic that I want to talk about is the idea of the green thumb. I do not believe in the idea of the green thumb. I think it is an anxiety provoking rhetoric that is unnecessary. There is no green thumb. I like to think of it more of a green muscle. And so, just for folks to know, the green thumb rhetoric really just began out of a time of king and queen where there was a particular king that enjoyed this fruit. And in order to harvest this fruit, you had to pick it, and it would leave green residue on your finger. And so it was said that having green fingers or green thumb meant that you picked the most of this fruit and thus you were rewarded by the king. It had nothing to do with taking care of plants. So the idea of the green thumb, throw it out the window. You don't need it. You don't need that anxiety in your life. I got you. So the first step that you really want to do when you're thinking about greening up your space is an environmental assessment. So basically you want to see the scene that you're working with. You want to know the scene that you're bringing your queens into, okay? And so the first thing that I did when I actually moved into this apartment was I whipped out my phone and got on my Compass app and got a sense of the direction of the windows so that I would have a better idea of the sunlight that was coming into my space, right? And so a lot of the things that we do in preparation for our plants is also great for our own bodies, right? And so I have one, two, three, four, five south facing windows. I'm very blessed to have a lot of direct light in my space. And that gave me an idea of like, okay, these are the kind of plants that I may be able to bring into my space because I have this lighting situation. Now, the Compass app, you literally go on your phone, say Compass app, it comes up on your phone. You point it in the direction of the window to give you the direction, and then you'll have a sense of it. Now, if you are a techie queen, you may want to invest in a light meter. So the light meter, the basic way that it works, I don't really use it, but it's fun to use and show off if into technology. And basically, you put this little meter here, and you point it in the direction of the light, and it'll measure the amount of lux, which is the measurement for light. And you can match up the lux to the particular plant that you're hoping to bring into your space. So if you're into technology, darling, get into a little light meter. You can order these online, and there you go. They're pretty cheap. The second thing is getting a sense of when you're doing environmental assessment is measuring the humidity and the temperature. So a lot of the plants that we bring into our space are tropical plants. So we want to make sure that we are matching our space to mimic their natural habitat. So invest in a little hygrometer. And so I'm going to put that up to the screen. It measures humidity, and it's a little humid today. and the temperature. So this is like a sweet spot for our tropical queen. So you just want to know what you're working with. The second thing is researching the green girl. I cannot tell you how many times I brought a plant into my home because she was looking gorgeous, didn't know how to take care of that queen, and she ended up going to that little botanical garden in the sky. So you just want to make sure that you're doing research on the plant and making sure that the needs of the plant matches what you have in your space, basically. The third thing is repotting. Now, I love me a little terracotta pot. All right, she's a queen on a budget, and they have drainage holes, which is really, really important for our plants, right? And terracotta pots are actually made of a porous material that allows the soil to breathe, so it prevents that tragic root rot that is caused by overwatering. All right, and we don't want to overwater our green girls because it will send them to that little botanical garden in the sky, and we don't want that. All right, so just make sure that when you get your plant, and I have a little plant here. This is the Monstera, a little baby Monstera deliciosa. So most plants come in a little nursery pot, right? And this is not meant to be a long-term permanent pot. It's meant to be a transportation vehicle, right? So you want to make sure that you get a pot that's at least 2 to 3 inches larger. This one's a little too big, but this pot right here is actually perfect, right? So it gives her a little bit of space to grow, but not too much space, all right? So repotting your queen. And then lastly, y'all, the last thing you want to make sure you do is that you're patient with your plant. They may lose a leaf because they're getting adjusted to the new space that you brought them in. All right, we all know that moving is a hassle, okay, for our own body. You can only imagine what it does to plants. So you want to make sure that you're patient with the queen, fit her in that place, trust yourself, and that you have made the right decision on where to place that plant and let her grow and establish her routine. All right, so we have some questions. I'm going to go into here. So how many plants did I have? From Casey, I think when my dad was over here, he counted and said I had 216 plants. I just say that I have over 200 because I've stopped counting. I cannot get the hang of watering my plant. It always feels like I'm overwatering. So when you're watering your plants, you want to make sure, and thank Casey for that question, you want to make sure that you're testing the soil moisture of your plants before you water them, all right? And so depending on the temperature, depending on the humidity in your space, depending on the amount of sunlight that shines into your space that particular week, your plants may be on different watering schedules, all right? And so that's just a part of being a plant parent. You got to meet the plants where they're at. And so I encourage folks to put their finger in 2 inches into the soil. And if the soil crumbles and falls off, your finger is very brittle and dry, then she needs a drink. And if the soil clings to your finger, is a little wet, then she doesn't need any water. The biggest mistake that folks do is that they'll tap the top soil, right? And really are not digging into the soil that is closest to the roots. You want to feel what's closest to the root so that you can make sure that you're not overwatering that queen. So now I'm going to bring in 3 amazing green girls that I think are wonderful for any beginner plant parent. Or if you don't have these plants in your plant fam and you already have plants, bring them into your space, darling. They're absolutely divine. So let's bring them in. First, we're going to go into my all-time favorite, which is the snake plant. And so the snake plant is native to West Africa and is one of the hardiest queens that you can find, which means that she is very, very hard to kill. And so this queen there's also been studies done by NASA saying that she is one of the best air purifiers. And so I have about maybe 25 of these queens in my space. And my biggest one is actually a little taller than me. And that's not saying a lot. I'm a very short person. I'm like 5'4". So that's not really that tall. But for me, she is a giant and I love it. So the snake plant is wonderful. I try to make sure that I water this queen every 2 to 3 weeks. It's a big mistake to water your plants every day or every other day. Plants do not need that much water, right? Plants have evolved to store water in their leaves. And so that's one of the biggest causes of, killing our plants is overwatering. So leave that queen be. And sunlight, she's marketed as a low light queen, but I try to make sure that I give her very bright indirect light. So what is bright indirect light? Basically, if you have a south facing window, it would be putting her to the side of that window so that she's not getting that harsh direct light, because plants do experience sunburn just like we do. We can learn a lot from our plants, right? So you just want to make sure that she's getting bright light. All plants need light. Low light does not mean no light, y'all. All right. Low light does not mean no light. Okay. You can take that to the bank, honey. Second, we're going to bring up the ZZ plant. And so you want to make sure that this queen is native to Eastern Africa. We're going to the motherland, y'all. We're going to the motherland. And so this queen is also another hardy queen that can survive without water for about 2 to 3 weeks. That's my watering schedule for her. And I'm going to try to see if I can bring this up. I'm going to get close and personal with y'all, okay? So if folks can see, there's this little bulb right there, little bulb, okay? And that's actually called a rhizome. So that is an enlarged root. And the whole purpose of that is to store water. So even if her soil is dry, that does not mean she need a drink, honey, because she has stored water on reserve, okay? So you just want to make sure that you know the anatomy of your plant. Be curious, lean into curiosity. Each plant is a classroom. Each plant is an opportunity to learn. So if you know, the more you know about the plant, the better you're able to care for that queen. So that's why I encourage folks to dive into researching, all right? So this queen can survive in a bunch of different lighting situations. I give all of my plants bright filtered light. And so I have south facing windows. And so I have a lot of sheer curtain that blocks the light, filters the light, and creates a very ambient light situation so that they're getting, all the sunlight that they need to engage in that photosynthesis, but they're not getting that harsh direct sun rays that will burn their foliage. All right. So I have the ZZ plant, get into her, she's all the rage. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is the Pothos. Now, the Pothos is native to a bunch of different places: South Africa, Australia, Southeast Asia. She's all over the place, honey. And why? Because she's so resilient and easy to care for. So I'm actually propagating this queen. I love to experiment with my plant. So these are all her roots. Isn't it gorgeous? Yes. So I'm propagating this queen, and this is actually some cuttings from my very first plant that I got almost 6 years ago. She was a marble queen pothos, but I think she was like a mix of like a marble queen pothos, a golden pothos, and just like a regular pothos. So she was a unique queen, which is why I had to bring her home. But I'm propagating this queen. They can survive. I've had this queen in water for like months, and she's still surviving. And lighting, I try to make sure I don't really give her direct light because it will burn her leaves. Her leaves are a little more delicate. And with water, I try to water her once a week. And so this queen, if you are a person that loves the immediate satisfaction of new growth realness, you want to invest in a pothos. She pops out a new leaf or a couple new leaves every week or so. So she grows really, really quickly. And I have a little plant nook on the other side of this wall, and it's a little overgrown. And so I have to do some pruning to make sure that the leaves and the vines are just not cluttering themselves, and I'm allowing them to flow and room to grow. So that is the result of this right here. She's gorgeous. Get into the pothos. You will not be sorry. Now, thought I would take some time to talk about soil. All right. Let me see if I have any other questions. All right. From Cody, I have never owned plants in my apartment and I want to remodel my home with plants. Are there specific recommendations of large and small plants to go with? I live in a northern climate where it gets cold into winter. Yeah. So I would definitely recommend all the plants that I just said. A larger plant that I would encourage you to explore is the Monstera, which is actually this queen. This is a baby. This is a baby. I have one on the other side of this wall, and her leaves are about the size of my head. So she is very, very large. And the Monstera, nicknamed the Swiss cheese plant because of the holes in her leaves, is actually a large vine, right? And so all the plants that we bring into our space are just little miniature versions of their larger sisters in the wild, right? And so this queen is definitely one that can get really, really big, and is on the easier side to care for. Now, Cody, if you want to challenge yourself, I would invest in the fiddle leaf fig. She is notoriously known as a very moody queen. All right, moody because she knows what she likes, and if you don't give it to her, she will leave you for that little botanical garden in the sky. So I encourage folks with the fiddle leaf fig. She enjoys very, very bright light. She loves a sultry scene, so she enjoys humidity. And so I have her next to a humidifier. It took me a couple tries to get her to thrive and grow. It took several tries, but I was persistent and I kept learning from my mistakes. And so I actually have a fiddle leaf fig that is about maybe this tall right now, and that's from the floor. And so the fiddle leaf fig, she can grow really, really huge. I went to National Botanical Garden in Ireland, and it was a tree. I saw a fiddle leaf fig, and it was actually a tree, like several feet high, and I was shook. But so let's get into soil, okay? So while you can go and purchase soil, prepackaged and all that good jazz, I like to get my hands a little dirty, all right? And I like to make my own soil mixture recipes. And so I'm just going to go through some components that you can definitely add. And I think there's something therapeutic about putting your hands in soil. My grandmother has always taught me that there are healing properties to interacting with nature. There's a car going by. All right. Y'all know the virtual life, all right? So the first component, so this is just pre-made potting soil, all right? Now, potting soil does not actually have any the soil or dirt that we see outside, right? This is specifically made for potted plants, all right, enclosed environment. Any of the soil outside, you would never want to go to a park and take some soil and put it in your house plant pot. You never want to do that because it's too dense, too thick, and the purpose of potting soil is that it allows the air to flow through the soil. It's porous, it's light, it's fluffy. So while the standard potting mix has everything you need in it, I like to add a little pizzazz in it because I'm just that plant parent. So some things that you can add to your potting mixes, all right? And so this is potting mix is made of pieces of wood, pieces of perlite, pieces of bark, peat moss, sphagnum moss, all those things that is great and wonderful for our plants. Now, because I'm notoriously known as an over waterer, an over nurturer, okay, I like to add perlite, an extra dose of perlite, and this is just pressed volcanic rock that you can add to your potting mix to add a little bit of a porous texture to the soil to ensure that the soil is drying out quickly after you water that particular plant. So you want to invest in some perlite. And all these materials you can find at your local gardening store. Support your local gardens, support your local plant shops, support your local nurseries, all right? And then we have fir bark. And I love fir bark. It's basically bits of fir bark from fir trees. And it has this wonderful aroma. Love it. Especially when you water your plants. Now imagine having like over 100 plants in your bedroom and all of them have fir bark and all the aromas releasing at the same time. Divine. All right. And so this is wonderful because it creates pockets and air pockets in the soil so that the soil can breathe. Because as much as our plants need water, they also need oxygen. All right. And so we want those roots to be able to, also enjoy oxygen as well, and that we're not drowning those roots. So fir bark is absolutely wonderful. You can find these in pet shops. I know that folks use fir bark for the bottom of like reptile cages and things of that nature. I use them for my plants. Okay. The other two things is horticultural sand. So if you want to add a little pizzazz, a little moment, a little desert chic to your cacti or succulent, you can put some horticultural sand over the top soil. It just creates like a little desert moment, a little cute little scene for your succulents and cacti queens. All right. So horticultural sand is also very wonderful and lovely. And then, darling, if you have those pots that do not have drainage holes, and I'm quite sure there are a number of y'all that have pots without drainage holes, and that is okay. That is a choice, okay? Depends. You want to make sure that any pot that you have that do not have drainage, you want to have some type of lava rocks, which are these little rocks right here at the bottom of that pot. And that is to make sure that the soil and the roots of that plant is elevated against any extra water that may collect at the bottom. Again, I encourage you, try to drill a hole in that pot or just, avoid pots without drainage holes altogether because it's ultimately not the healthiest option for your plant. Okay, so just want to make sure that you're putting some lava rocks in any pot that do not have drainage holes if that's the choice you decide to make. Okay. All right. We have from Teresa. If you are on a budget, is there a pre-made soil mixture? Oh yeah. So Fox Farm soils, divine. Love them. I've never had any issues with their soil quality. It's made from organic materials, and the soil is just wonderful. So I would definitely recommend Fox Farm soil. Definitely my number one and my go-to. I won't be shady to any of the other soil companies because I'm just not that person. But I encourage you to look up Fox Farm soil. They also have a line of wonderful organic fertilizers for our plants as well. And fertilizer is very, very important. You can get compost, which is a mixture of plant matter, animal matter, and you can mix it into your soil mixture recipe. I usually have it here, but I think I actually used it on one of my green girls most recently. And you can mix it into the soil mixture, and it provides a slow release of nutrients into the soil. So you want to get into that. Let me see what other questions. What's your favorite plant you've ever had and why? Ooh, that's really hard. Each plant for me brings a memory. So I'm very picky about how I shop for my plant. In the beginning, I was just like, ooh, lushness. Yes, yes, yes. But now with over 200 plants in my space, I kind of have to be very intentional about what I bring into my space. And so I don't think I have a favorite one because each one sparks a memory. So if there's like a moment in time that I want to preserve, and a moment in time that I want to remember or symbolize, I'll typically buy a plant. I have this jade plant right here, my gorgeous jade plant. I have this gorgeous jade plant, and her largest sister is over there, but I'm not going to move her. And I got this from a trip upstate with some close friends. And it was like one of the first trips I took while we were in quarantine. We all got tested. Trip upstate, and every time I look at this plant, I think of that moment with my friends. So I'm just very intentional about how the plants that I bring into my life. Because I know space is limited, and I just want to make sure that my space can breathe and flow in the ways that I want it to. At what point did this is from Kim? At what point did you give up on this sick plant? I hate to throw something away, but my snake plant has brown leaves for 3 months. You know what? I have that issue all the time. And so I typically try to propagate a leaf of the plant. And I've done that with so many of my plants that I've overwatered throughout the years. I don't think I have. Oh, child, y'all are just on point. So actually, this is a Dracaena sayuri, which is a kind of snake plant. And her larger sister suffered root rot. I overwatered her and she didn't survive, but I managed to keep a cutting of the plant, and she has roots, and hopefully she'll start to grow some new pups and they'll start a whole new plant. So if you do have a plant that is struggling and you want to first check the root system. So pull the plant out of the planter, look at the roots. If the roots are mushy, moldy, then you probably can't save that root system, but you can save a leaf of that plant. So I would encourage folks to really do that. How often do you need to repot indoor plants? So that really depends on the plant, obviously. And again, repotting does not always mean that you are increasing the size of the pot, right? Sometimes it just means that you are replacing the soil. The purpose of repotting is really making sure that you're giving her a new environment, whether that's just new soil or that's new soil and a new pot, right? Because after a while, the nutritious content of the potting soil is going to be depleted, right? So you want to make sure that you're giving her new nutritious soil. So I try to repot my plants I would say maybe every once or every 1.5 years. I'm on like a rotating schedule where, I'll look at the plant, I'll get a sense of whether she needs to be repotted. And you can get a sense of, whether they need to be repotted by looking at their growth. So if you're like, girl, like you usually grow in this time of year and you are not budging, then you may want to repot that queen. You can also tell by lifting up the plant and looking at the drainage hole. And if the roots are coming out the drainage hole, then child, she needs more room to grow. So give her a new pot and some new soil. All right. But then again, there are particular plants like spider plant that actually enjoys her roots being a little confined. And you can only know that by doing the research, right? So really use it as an opportunity to explore and to learn. I just love for this. I love learning for the sake of learning. So the spider plant is one of the queens that I've learned. I was like, oh, actually, I may not need to repot her because she actually enjoys her, roots being confined. So I'll give her new soil, but I'll keep her in the same pot. All right. What type of budget do I need to make myself a plant queen too? Darling, there are so many ways that you can green up your life. You can propagate, right? So I propagate so many of my plants, and that is a free and easy way to continue to green up your life with the plants that you already have, honey. I do plant swap, so I'll trade plants with friends. I'll trade cuttings with friends. And where my local plant nurseries and shops, and they're typically, once you establish like a good relationship with them, sometimes they give me free plants and all that good stuff. So I think there are many ways. I am very I wouldn't say I'm cheap, I'm just very mindful of my budget. I know that there are some plants that are going for several thousands of dollars, and I will never spend that amount of money on a green girl. Um, but I think there are ways of, building connections within the community and sharing plants with each other. So if you're on a budget, I would encourage you to use that as an opportunity to build community with folks. And so I'm trying to figure out if there's any last thoughts that I have. But it's taken me quite some time to get to this point where I have over 200 plants in my apartment. I killed my fair share of plants, so I'm not the perfect plant parent. I will never claim to be the perfect plant parent. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes love, it takes care. And you learn a lot about yourself, right? Like your plants are an opportunity in a mirror to reflect on the kind of nurturer that you are. And, my plants are a constant reminder of the ways that I can care for myself, right? So when I'm caring for my plants, I'm asking, do they need water? Do they need nutrients? Do they need sunlight? What can I give them to make sure they're growing? And as I've been, gardening, I've realized, well, girl, I need to think about that for myself. Am I drinking water? Am I staying hydrated? All right. Am I giving myself, the nutrients for my own roots to grow? Am I giving myself room and patience to grow? Am I, allowing the sun to touch my melanated skin, right? So I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from our plant if we sit down and take the time to learn those lessons, right? Plants are not furniture. They are not decor pieces. They are living, breathing creatures that we are bringing into our homes, and we need to respect that nature with our curiosity, with a level of dedication, with a level of patience and care. So that would be my advice for folks. There's a beautiful, wonderful journey right in front of you, in the shape of these green little creatures that we call plants. And I hope everyone has an opportunity to enjoy that journey, bask in that journey. And if folks want to learn more, I actually have a Skillshare class, and I think they're going to pop the link in there for folks to check out. So please check out my Skillshares class. I go into all these different tips and tools and tricks that you can utilize to make sure that your green girl is serving lush looks, honey. And I'm on Instagram at Plant Kween. That's Plant Kween, honey, because language is something that we can be playful with. And so, everyone, I hope you enjoyed yourself. Hope you learned a little something new from this little enthusiastic plant parent. And I hope you follow me along on this journey. And hopefully, we have an opportunity to connect in real life when things are safer. So, everyone, enjoy your day. Hope you're serving lush look and happy Pride Month.